right, so we're back again on the last portion of our files assignments and modules, and this is really not really having to do so much with files, but what do you do when you read in essentially a string and how do you break it apart, or how do you parse data? So we're going to take a look at that using our candy calories example. And we're going to start right off by looking at the code we left off with when we were reading and writing from files. So let me pull that up. So if you remember from last time, we were reading from candy calories, and let's pop that up so we can take a look at that. And there's candy calories. There are 4 different candies and their accompanying calories. So our task last time was we were reading from this file and we were writing back to Candy Report. So let's just make sure that's running. Okay, so let's run it. Okay, and after we read one line, we were writing it out to system.out. And so our output looked like this. And then we were also writing it back out to our output file, which was called Candy Report, and that looked like this. Okay, so really nothing, we were reading in a line and then writing out a line. Okay, but the question now is, what would you do if you really wanted your output to look like the following? All right, so this little diagram I made up, this is our input file. There's our 5 candies and their respective calories. We're reading from that file, and what if we wanted our candy report to be more like a report? So it had the title, it lists the candy, the amount of calories, and if it's over 100 calories, it's a high calorie snack. So we essentially did that for every line. So you've got to be able to separate the Snickers or the candy name from the calories. So we somehow need to parse this or break this apart. Otherwise, there's no way we can write this out and evaluate it, because we're evaluating whether it's a high calorie snack based on the amount of calories it is. So we have to parse this line. Once we read it in, we got to break it apart. So it looks like we've got a string and then an integer. So let's go back and let's see how we can tackle that. So we're back to our original code here, and we're still going to go ahead, and as long as there are still lines in the file to be read, we're going to go ahead and read those, and we're going to put them in a string called line. And then right now, all we're doing is printing that line out in both system.out and our output file. But we need to somehow break apart this line. So every time we read a string, we want to break it apart into a string that represents the candy name and then an integer which represents the calories. So we're going to use the scanner class again. It comes in super handy. And we're just going to call this our new scanner object tokens. And we only need this object inside the while loop, so that's why I'm defining it and creating it inside here. And we're going to create our object, our scanner object, just like we have before. But now instead of associating it with like system.in for the keyboard or what we did up here, we associated it with the file. We're actually going to associate the scanner object called tokens with the string. And the string is the line we just read in. So every time we read a line, we're going to create an object called tokens and associate that with the line. And then we can use our standard scanner read methods to go ahead and pluck out or parse or tokenize the line into a string and then an integer. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we would do that. So I've gone ahead and added a couple variables that I know we're going to need. One is a string called candy name, and the other will be an integer called calories. So let's go back down here and let's use those. So the first, we know that our data looks like this. It looks like it looks like the name of the candy, a comma, and then the calories. Name of the candy, comma, calories. So we have a well-formed file. We know that it's always delimited or separated by commas. So that's going to help us out when we have to go ahead and break it apart. So we're going to tell this tokens object that, you know what, I'm interested in breaking my data apart with this delimiter. We're going to break it apart by the comma because we just looked at it and that's how the data is separated. So that is different than comma space or space comma. Completely different. This is just delimited by a single comma. So now it can go ahead and when we read, it can recognize that delimiter, the comma. So we know that first piece of data we want to read is the candy name. And now we can use our good old scanner methods, and we're going to use next to read the next string, which is our candy name. And then we'll go ahead and for calories, we know that is an integer. So we'll use next int. And now for every line, we're going to break that apart and read the candy name and then the calories. So at this point, we have variables that have, for instance, would have now Snickers and 215. Snickers would be in the candy name and 215 would be in calories. So now you can just use those as you would any other variable in your output statement here. So let's go ahead and generate that output statement or implement that. All right, so right now we're writing out just the line, but what we really want is something that looks like this, remember? We want it to say the candy name and then a vertical bar, 215 calories, and if it's over 100 calories, a high calorie snack. And the last thing we want to say is we evaluated 4 candy snacks. But let's get this line, each line coded up first, and we'll take a look at that. All right, so I'm going to comment out this line, and let's start building our new output file line. And first thing we want to do is say the candy name, and then a vertical bar and the calories. So let's see if we're kind of getting close. Let's sort of build this up, see what we got. Okay, let's look at candy report. Okay, so we're kind of getting there. All right, so let's go back to our read-write file. And we know that if it is, the calories are less than, are greater than or equal to 100 calories, it's a high calorie snack. And we can do that by using a conditional operator inside our out file print. So let's do that. And I'm kind of cheating here because I've already got that coded up, but let's see how this works. Notice this is a print, and I'm going to finish each line with the print line by using the conditional operator. So if the calories are greater than or equal to 100, and if that's true, I'm going to display high calorie snack. If that's false, low calorie snack. So let's take a look and see if we're getting close here. So back to the candy report. It's looking better. So the only thing we need to do is count up how many snacks we evaluated and write that last statement out. So our goal is this, remember? We want to write out evaluated 4 candy snacks. So we somehow need a counter that's counting how many lines we're reading. So that's going to be inside of our loop. So let's go back to our code and check that out. So I have added another variable up here called count and set it to 0. I'm going to use that to count how many lines we read. So we're inside our while loop. I've just read a line, and now I want to increment my counter. All right, and it's only going to increment that as long as it has a line to read. So when I'm out of this while loop is when I want to go ahead and display how many lines that I've read or how many snacks I've evaluated. So let's see exactly what the verbiage is that we wanted for that last line, and then we'll code it up. All right, we wanted it to say evaluated this number of candy snacks. Great, let's go back and pop that into our code. All right, so I started working on the system.out, evaluated, and we evaluated how many different snacks. That's going to be sitting inside our count variable. And then we're going to go ahead and concatenate that with the end of our literal here, candy snacks. And let's go ahead and finish that system.out. We've already got the closing of our file, so we should be good to go. Let's check it out. So we're running it. We're really interested in candy report. Not there yet. Let me go back and see what's going on. Oh, because I wrote it to system.out. Wrong. Well, that would be good. Let's see what system.out showed. I didn't even look. Yeah, system.out showed 4 candy snacks. Oh, and it gives me an opportunity to clean up my code too. I need a little space there. Okay, I don't really want it going to system.out. We wanted it to go to our output file. And the object is called out file. But that was a good example though. You got to see how it worked. And so that's our output going to system.out, but now let's look at candy report. Looking good. Hey, let's put a line in front of that so that it doesn't butt up right against those. So I'm going to come back here and put a backslash in there so it looks a little neater. Run it. And we've got candy report. Looks good. Okay, so let's kind of review what we just did here. You had your existing code from reading and writing. So it wasn't until you got into your while loop and you read a line from the file. So that's what you're breaking apart or parsing, this line right here. So we want to be able to parse or tokenize. Those all mean the same thing, or break apart line. Okay, that's our goal. And so we know that line is delimited or separated or delimited by a comma. And so that's what this says. So then we're able to read until it sees the delimiter, the comma, and we know that's a string. And then the last item in the line is an integer because our file is well formed. There's no surprises. Everything is a string and an integer. And at this point, we just have variables, and you can go ahead and use those variables any way you want. We went ahead and just wrote them back out in a different format and then evaluated the calories and counted how many lines essentially were read from the file. So that's really all there is to breaking apart and tokenizing strings. In the actual slides, I have another way of doing it too, where you use the split string function, which puts things into an array. That's very helpful too. So you can go ahead and take a look at that in the slides if that's a way that you want to do it. But this is the kind of usual straightforward way of breaking apart or tokenizing strings. Okay, so as we wrap up this video note, you should have everything that you need to finish the activity and also the assignment associated with reading and writing from files.